Welcome to Farm Your Daily, a Field Forward podcast. I'm your host, David Geiger. Today on Farm Your Daily, tax reform, conservation, and landowner protections are priorities of the Iowa Farm Bureau. We speak with its president, Brent Johnson, about what's going on in 2026. Please be sure to like and follow the podcast as well as our social media at Field Forward Pod. We would love to have you join our community, keeping folks informed about what is affecting our farmers. This is Farm Your Daily. And joining me on Farm Your Daily, we are going to look at the goals of 2026 for the Iowa Farm Bureau. Its president, Brent Johnson, joins us today on Farm Your Daily. Brent, thank you so much for your time, and let's just jump into it. There are a lot of things going on this year, and what are some of the big issues that you guys are looking at?
Yeah, well, first of all, it's always good to be with you, David. Just to dive right in, we're all going to learn what this session for the Iowa legislature is going to be all about. But ultimately, of course, the governor's had her condition of the state speech, and a large part of that message was dealing with property taxes. And so we're currently digging through the bill that she's submitted and understanding the details and where are our opportunities and where's the challenges that we can turn back into opportunities again. It's not very often that we get new things to talk about in Iowa when it comes to policy and opportunities. But, this year I do expect some conversations around hydrogen mining. And, that becomes an interesting conversation in production agriculture. So we can discuss some of those things. And the production standards and some environmental concerns. The Des Moines Waterworks has their delignification system turned on again, and so we're ready to have some of those conversations and actually tell the good stories about what farmers are doing across the state of Iowa.
Hydrogen mining. That I want to definitely talk about and dig into many of those points you mentioned, but what is hydrogen mining?
Yeah, well, so there's a potential new opportunity with mining hydrogen in Iowa. So geologically, there's the mid-Iowa continent drift that runs diagonally from the northeast to the southwest, and it's basically a very minor fault line. But that minor fault line gives us the opportunity to explore the hydrogen pockets that are deposited deep inside the Earth's crust. And ultimately, that'll blend right into property rights, mineral rights for landowners. And the exploration of hydrogen is something that is a very new concept in Iowa. The opportunity there, though, is the exploration, the future use of this explored hydrogen is the first destination of that is in the production of anhydrous ammonia. And so, it puts us in the unique crosshairs where we happen to have a unique geological structure that allows us to explore some of those opportunities and produce a lower carbon footprint form of nitrogen that ultimately will get used right here in the same footprint. So, when it comes to logistics, transportation, costs, CI score, just making sure that, we can utilize our own resources to, again, produce our own crops and better farmers' situation across the state. We'll see how valid some of those things are in the future and what those opportunities actually end up cultivating. And we'll explore those opportunities through some legislation here this session.
That is fascinating. Thanks for sharing. Scooting over to another one of the priorities, tax reform is a big topic going on. What type of tax policies are you guys watching for farmers and their rural communities?
Yeah, well, that's a fantastic question, and it's extremely complex. So, in the governor's comments, she talked about the homestead tax credit, and she wants to dispose of that. And we're concerned about what that means for property taxes moving forward. The bill that she's proposing is very complex, and we've had conversations with the governor's office as to what that motion means at the end of the bill. And there's some other aspects in there that we're trying to figure out what those details are, how those are actually going to translate and play out at the end of the removal of that homestead tax credit. The other tax credit that's there is the ag land, and that tax credit is not going to be touched. We're very happy about that. That makes sure that the ag land taxes, those credits stay in place, and that bucket is fully funded. The production formula is not going to be touched. We're happy about that. So there's several other things through there. There's TIF conversations, there's save conversations, and again, all those details we're digging into them, as we speak here now, and we'll have more information in the future, and again, making sure that as the governor tries to right size property taxes for all of Iowans, that it doesn't unburdenly shift those burdens towards agriculture land.
Another part of the conversation within agriculture land is that conservation-minded perspective that farmers already have, but sometimes find themselves in conflict when it comes to how state and federal levels legislate that. What is the outlook in 2026 for support and priorities when it comes to soil conservation, water quality?
Well, and that's a fantastic question, and really, that's something that's being pursued on many different fronts. There's federal opportunities there. So on the federal side, we're still working towards a complete farm bill, because even though many of the risk management tools that we all employ were taken care of in the one big beautiful bill, conservation, research, some of those things that are going to make sure that agriculture stays strong, we still have to take care of those priorities, and the best way to do that is in the farm bill. So we're going to do that. But then shifting back to the state of Iowa again, Governor Reynolds has shown some really strong leadership in water quality and conservation funding. In fact, her very first bill that she signed as governor was Senate File 518, and that bill has done tremendous amounts when it comes to conservation practices on the ground, things that farmers can employ directly to better and lessen the environmental impacts, and things like in the last 5 years, cover crop usage is up 90%. And we're just about to 4 million acres when it comes to cover crops. And that's tremendous. That's a tremendous rate of adoption that is due in part to that long-term vision. We've got, I think the numbers, 416-ish thousand acres of wetlands have been constructed and restored, and 140 new water quality wetlands. So there's a tremendous amount of good stories, along with just the day in, day out management by farmers to maximize the efficiency of the inputs that they're putting on there. So on their farms to grow the crops that Iowa is known around the world for production. And so as we all become more in tune to the data, to the science research, and really fine tuning some of these tools that are available based on today's technology, we actually have a very good story to tell when it comes to Iowa production.
I want to go back to the tax conversation, specifically on the side of property taxes, because I know there were some updates done in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, as well as a couple other provisions over the last few years. What is still necessary to watch for, and what is necessary to work on to include it as a priority to have for Iowa farmers?
Well, a lot of the property taxes that are collected in rural Iowa, they really do benefit parts of rural Iowa. Taking care of the roads and the schools and some of the emergency services that are out there in the rural communities. The challenge is just making sure that those those priorities are funded accurately and adequately so that rural Iowa is properly represented when it comes to some of those opportunities for infrastructure, for emergency services, etc. So as we're having these conversations about property tax reform in Iowa, I think it's important to understand that property taxes should pay for property services. And one good example is, over the last couple of years, mental health used to be paid for through property taxes. Well, mental health is an extremely important service that needs to be well funded, but that's a people problem. That's a people service, and so to fund that through property really isn't the accurate way to do that. So as we're talking about property tax reforms, that's going to be basically our large oversweeping conversation, is to make sure that property taxes are being adequately spent towards property services.
Brent, before I let you go, I did want to take a look at 2026 as a whole. What are you excited for? What's the Iowa Farm Bureau excited for and looking forward to in the new year?
Well, there's so many conversations to be had. Currently, as we're speaking now, I'm in Southern California. We just got done with the American Farm Bureau conference out here in Anaheim, and we had the four corners of the ag committees. So the House and Senate, Republican and Democrat representatives were there. Secretary Rowlands was there, having conversations about what agriculture means in 2026. And everybody to a T agreed that, year-round E15 and more conservation, properly funded, getting ourselves to the risk management tools that have been passed in the one big beautiful bill. Everybody was in line there. And while we have some challenges on trade and tariff, and the president and the administration are trying to right size some of those discrepancies that we've had in the past, we need to be able to get there in production agriculture. So we've been having many of those conversations. So those opportunities, those domestic driver opportunities like E15, the whole milk in schools bill is on the president's desk, and so that's to be signed immediately. So some of these things that we can pass for domestic demand driver policies that really start to solve some of those issues about supply and demand and some of the disruptions. And so as we move forward through this year, I'm really looking for a lot of those opportunities to take care of ourselves domestically. Yes, we need to have those conversations with trade internationally. Iowa and the Midwest are so good at producing crops that we have to have international trade because we just outproduce our own domestic abilities. Let's capitalize on the domestic opportunities while we're also having those broader international conversations.
Brent Johnson is the president of the Iowa Farm Bureau, joining us on Farm Here Daily. Thank you so much for your time, Brent.
Absolutely. Thank you, David.
This is Farm Here Daily, a Field Forward podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Again, in order to continue to produce this type of local content, we would love to have you join our community, so please follow the podcast as well as our social media channels at Field Forward Pod. You can also find me on social media at Geiger Reports. Again, I am your host, David Geiger, and I'll be back again tomorrow, everybody.